Oklahoma makes a visit down to Fort Collins today. TCU, Fort Worth. 55-24. They come up on the wrong end. First time with not counting the COVID season since 1999. Our producer, Rob Dowser, hit us with that. Almost 24 years that they lost 2 games back-to-back in the regular season, and they didn't just lose tonight. They got knocked out. Trevor, obviously, we're going to start with you. It's your show here. Oklahoma, they started top 10. They got this bright, charismatic, big-time, universally recognized coordinator as a head coach who comes back home. You got a quarterback that's already thrown for 6,000 or 7,000 yards at UCF to come and run the show. Portal is strong. Yes, they lost some, but they already got in. They picked some guys up. They want for nothing. And they go down to a TCU team that not outboxed them, outclassed them.
Yeah.
Are they still drunk from did they not sober up from the Kent State game, or is this who they are? Or break it down for us.
The first thing that jumps out to me is disappointment in the defensive play of Oklahoma, especially with Brent Venables at the helm. Now, I get it. Brent Venables is sitting in a new leather office chair. He's trying to figure out how to shake hands, kiss babies, put together a defensive plan, switch his mic over during the game and listen to the offensive side, worry about situational football. I mean, he's going through a learning curve himself, as opposed to just dialing up a defense and being the best defensive mind in the country that he's been for so long. That being said, find a way to get your defense to stop what I would call a pedestrian TCU team. And all the credit goes to him. Max Duggan played fantastic. I thought Adrian Martinez last week played the best game of his career. So you got 2 quarterbacks playing some of the best football they've ever played in their career against Oklahoma. Is that those guys rising to the occasion, or Oklahoma defense playing that bad? I think it's a little of both. So really disappointed in Oklahoma's defense and the inability to make an adjustment to stop the bleeding. That being said, in this game specifically, you saw how much Dylan Gabriel means to this team. Now, Dylan Gabriel is not having a good game, but he's the glue that holds that offense together, because you bring in number 2, Bevel, and it fell off really. I mean, we had no shot of winning. Oklahoma had no shot of winning with him coming in the game. Hopefully he's able to return, but it's 2 weeks in a row now. You see the top dog in the Big 12 for a lot of years that just looked extremely pedestrian on both sides of the ball. And they're going to have to make some big changes, specifically on the defensive side, if they're going to want to go up against Oklahoma State and Baylor and Kansas down the stretch here. It's going to be an interesting uphill battle.
Hack, let's just go to that uphill battle. Mm-hmm. Given what they are unveiling themselves to be, now this is back-to-back weeks. Couldn't really stand up and get the job done in Manhattan. Now they go down here to Fort Worth and get laid out. And you got monsters and a beast. We'll call Kansas a beast right now in front of you. Yet, how do you stabilize something like this? And when do we know the wheels just are going to come off? When is it going to get ugly? You know, this is a really impatient fan base. You saw what happened with our guy, Spencer Rattler. Last year, he's leading an undefeated Sooner team, and they're already calling for number 2, and they eventually got their wish. This is a proud championship blue blood program. How many more times can they get knocked out and still feel the support and surge of Sooner Nation? And Trevor, I want you to answer the same thing.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see Trevor's answer on this. So here's one thing, though, that I will talk about. You're talking about defense, Trevor, and I don't know if you remember much about what you talked about last year, but I did tune into the Bryce and Trevor Knight show pretty frequently. And the one thing I remember you talking about,
great show.
The one thing I remember you guys talking about when it specifically pertained to Oklahoma was the fact that defensively, they were not a very good football team last year, personnel, scheme, so on and so forth. And they balance that out with a pretty high powered offense. But, that only takes you so far at times, right? So my question is I don't know how much of a jump, or the thing I ask myself is I don't know how much of a jump from a personnel standpoint you're going to make with a new head coach, transfer portal of an old head coach leaving on the defensive side of the ball. And the fact that he's bringing in a new scheme, like how much of a difference does that make in ultimate Jimmys and Joes that you have going out there and executing? What I will say is moving forward now, if I'm Brent from a defensive side of the ball, I'm figuring out, I think you've had plenty enough game time, plenty enough game reps to figure out what they do well and understand that you can't ask these guys to play outside of themselves. You need to kind of stay in that lane of what they do well and know that, to your point, Trevor, if you have Dylan Gabriel back there, if you can keep the game close and bend don't break defensively, keep the game close and let the offense do what the offense does. I think that's kind of where you have to lay your hat and hang your hat if you're Oklahoma moving forward this year. And then it's going to be up to Brent to get the guys in there defensively that he needs to run his scheme. And then likewise on offense, keep up the same type of expectations that Oklahoma's earned.
And I think that's a great point, Hack. But here's where the disappointment comes in with Brent is that with the same Jimmys and Joes, as you use that term, those Jimmys and Joes last year and the subsequent years before that weren't allowing 41 and 55 points back-to-back weeks. They've got enough talent on that side of the ball to make an adjustment. I think that as an Oklahoma fan is what everybody is so disappointed in is, hey, you've got the best defensive mind in college football, arguably, and you're not making adjustments with the guys that you have that are on scholarship, that are 4- and 5-star guys, maybe some 3-star guys up at OU, and you're not making adjustments against an unranked TCU team that's putting up 55 points. I mean, that's where the disappointment comes in. To your point, though, give him some time. I get it. It's year one.
Yeah.
They had a bunch of craziness going. It was kind of a mad dash to the finish line and getting some guys in the transfer portal, getting some guys to stay and not go with Lincoln to SC. I mean, it was crazy, but you're the best defensive mind in the country. You got to find a way to get it done and
No doubt.
stop the bleeding.
But what if the bleeding gets to say 6-6 or 7-6? When we get to the end and it's the Sooner football luncheon or end of the year deal, and it's 6-6 or 7-6.
Well, I don't remember the last time that's unacceptable because I don't remember the last time an Oklahoma team. It had to have been before Bob Stoops. It's been 20 plus years that they were under 5. If they were under 500 or even.
But I only ask that because Texas remains, Oklahoma State, Baylor remain, the Jayhawks are still hanging out front. Iowa State's a knuckleballer. The weight of their schedule is in front of them.
Yep.
And if we're already seeing them get caught and get knocked out in some of these bars that they would normally be the alpha dog in, like, how are we supposed to envision them going straight on through with the same crew? It's not like they're waiting for guys to get back healthy. This is the crew.
This is the crew. And the worst part about that, it's not like they dropped a non-conference game. They are 0-2 in conference, which means they've got an uphill battle. And you talk about, hey, you drop one at the beginning of the year and you're Utah, right? You can still go out west and you can win your conference and accomplish some of the goals that you want to accomplish. You're 0-2 against two of the teams that we picked to finish in the back half of the conference. To your point, George, you got an uphill battle to even get to the point where you're in the conversation of, well, you're not in the conversation, I guess is the point. Like, you're not going to the Big 12 title game. It is a failed season already in Norman, if you ask me.
Before we roll, Dylan Gabriel, is this what obviously all Sooner fans want to see him play at his absolute best, but could you have seen this coming out of him? And look, where do they go with that trigger man? Because a whole lot of schools have great quarterbacks, but I don't know too many programs who are anchored or triggered as much by the quarterback as this program has been in the last decade.
He's an incredible Band-Aid. Despite the last 2 weeks, a guy that has the experience that he has, that can come in and drive culture, that understands the offense. He is he's a godsend for that Oklahoma team. Him going down, to my point earlier, proved that, because they don't have the depth behind him. They got to go out and get some cats, whether it's the transfer portal or some guys coming through this recruiting pipeline to kind of fill that room back up. And we've talked about it. You lose two guys that are starting at big-time programs in Caleb Williams at USC and Spencer Rattler at South Carolina. Say what you want about them. That's depth in a QB room.
That's a hit.
And so you see Dylan Gabriel go down this week, and that is a blow to Oklahoma. You got to be on your hands and knees hoping and praying that he stays healthy the rest of the year, or it could get really, really bad. I think last week, not to dwell on last week, but I thought Dylan Gabriel played really well in the loss to Kansas State. They gave up 41 points. Tough to win that way, but he is the glue on that offensive side of the ball.
We're dropping our merch.
We got to start calling Underwood Daddy Brad.
But I'm a big pod guy.
Breaking news. The Field of 68 has an online store, and it's your one-stop shop for the latest and greatest merch in college basketball and college football. You can find shirts to support your favorite team, make fun of your rival team, or boast Field of 68 catchphrases like Daddy Brad, Cussin' and Discussin', and the Star Heels. Go to www.fieldof68.shop today and enter promo code TOUCHDOWN for 20% off at checkout.